Savior Jesus the Christ. Amen. As we jump into Mark's Gospel, just a couple of introductory remarks so that we understand kind of how this unfolds. First of all, if you remember what I read just a few moments ago, Mark's Gospel is the only one that doesn't talk about the birth of Jesus at all. Jesus' Gospel in Mark begins years later, at about year 30, with his baptism. And this whole introductory portion that we read, Mark is assuming that you've already heard the story from Luke and heard the story from John. And remember the genealogical structure of Matthew. Mark begins by placing you smack dab in the middle of this unfolding drama that God has created called redemption. And because of that, he doesn't want to spend any time in Jesus' childhood. Because believe it or not, as interesting as that is for us, it's unimportant to the whole narrative. The whole story isn't built around a little baby born in Bethlehem. The whole story is built around what God does on this earth. And so Mark comes along, and he just simply says the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And automatically he launches into the prophet Isaiah. He can't even stand for that moment without looking back and saying, see, today exists because of what Nancy just read. Today is here because of what Isaiah wrote as a promise. He wants you to know that today exists because it is the fulfillment of a promise made generations ago. And what he's doing is he's saying, you can trust this, you can believe this, you can begin to live this out because God who was present then is present now. The God who spoke then about coming has arrived. And now there's some work to be done. John the Baptizer is coming. He's done all your work for you, folks. This is pretty easy. The hard lifting, as we say, is done. There is nothing you need to do anymore because God is taking care of it. He sent John the Baptizer, who was Jesus' second cousin, into this world to do it. What? Make straight the paths. And we hear about that. When I was a little kid, I loved Tonka trucks. And I grew up in a small farm in southwest Minnesota. One of my great things was excavation. Okay, kids, you don't know what this is, but some of you will. We had an outhouse. Remember those, don't you guys? Yeah. We had a path down to that outhouse. There were no lights on it. My dad and I talk about that frequently. He goes, that was stupid. We should have put lights on it. But you know where I would excavate, don't you? Right off the path. I had a big hole. I could dig that out with my loader, put it in my Tonka truck and go. I didn't have a straight path from the house to the outhouse. It kind of wound. I had to go around Mike's pit. It wasn't straight at all. It wasn't safe. There was no light. One night, Muriel didn't come back. My mom and dad had a group of neighborhood couples that would get together once a month to play cards. Muriel never came back. She went to the outhouse. Yes, they grabbed a few flashlights. You know where they found her? She went straight. Half did. And she ended up in Mike's pit. God sends John the Baptizer. He says, make the path straight between me and them. His task was to tell the story in such a way that it shot like an arrow to the heart of humanity. And God would open up humanity and say, see, this is what I'm up to. I'm coming straight into your life. I love you so much that there's going to be nothing that's a detour between me and you. And I love you so much that I want nothing to be a detour between you and your neighbor. And that's what he's talking about, these straight paths. It's not about a physical, it's about a spiritual. And once that spiritual connection is made, then these relational things become really tight. Over the years, as the church, we flowed in and out of all of those relational things. How many of you remember the time or the stories about the old church? Women sat on one side, men sat on the other. Raise your hands if you heard that. Your grandpa ever tell you, Michael, children should be seen and not heard? I got a propensity to talk a little bit, but one is younger than And you've heard that too, haven't you? You know, we had all these things that were barriers that kept us from being close to one another. Mark's gospel, the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. He grabs Isaiah, he goes all the way through, and he says, I'm preparing a way. I'm preparing my way to get to you. That's what Advent is. It's our time to plop ourselves down in the midst of this hustle and bustle and listen to God, who says, I'm coming to you in order to be with you, in order that you might be with me. And Advent is our time to stop focusing in on ourselves. Stop worrying about all the things of this world and sit with this God who says, straight away I'm coming. When I was at seminary, I met Simon Fenson was his name. And Simon was from London. His parents were officers in the Salvation Army, and he had married a good Lutheran girl from Minnesota. And he was at seminary after I left. And he always talked about it. I'll be to your place straight away. When Simon would say straight away, we knew he was coming instantly. It meant there was going to be nothing between when he leaves and when he gets there. He's leaving the door now. That's what God does. I'm coming to you straight away. John the Baptizer seemed to. He's retold this story which connects you to the history, to the promise which is now lived out. Sometimes we feel like we're getting bounced back and forth, but really it's the Jewish way of saying, y'all come now here. And God's straight path, God says. And God has done it. Why? Why has God done all of this? Mark gives us a glimpse in verse 8, where he says, I have baptized you with water, but he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit. He's going to breathe something so deeply into those he's come straight away for that they can never die. That's the promise of Isaiah, embodied in Jesus and lived out in your life. Now you find a straight path to your Messiah this Christmas season after we move through Advent.